The Pyromancer uses their control of fire to cause destruction amongst the battlefield. Using a built-in heat mechanic from gear, you'll be able to use your burns as an asset to increase your own flame's power. With the choices between Sorcerer or Wizard, you'll have an option to cast meta magic for augmenting effects, or choose a safer route to have more control over your fire, causing no damage to allies. No matter what option you'll pick, you'll be able to increase your own spell power to add fuel to your flames. The Warlock could also fit this role, however it has its own unique playstyle with unique gear choices that I think would warrant its own video. Before we dive in, this video is for Acts 1 and 2, so if you do want to see an alternative endgame version using late game gear, comment down below, and of course if you want to see the Flamelock or any other builds, you know what to do. So no matter what, whether you are the Sorcerer or the Wizard version of this build, it revolves around putting stacks of heat upon yourself. To do that, because of your gloves, anytime you do fire damage, you will gain a stack of heat. Using Scorching Ray is a great way to do multiple hits in a row to get your stacks of heat up super high. So for example, I'm going to do a level 4 spell here, and I'm going to hit this target here. And you can see I now have 7 stacks of heat. Every turn that you have a stack of heat though, however, you will take 1d4 fire damage. You can, however, now use heat convergence. Because I have 7 stacks, my next spell I do will do additional damage. This is really great for Fireball because Fireball will have it hit every single spell. Or every body in that area, I guess you could say. So what I'm going to do, just to showcase that, is I'm going to Misty Step so I can get close to them. And now we are going to use our Fireball spell at rank 5, and we're going to hit this target here. And if you take a look at the damage, you can see it says Empowered Evocation, which is from a wizard thing, but then you see heat convergence, 7 stacks of heat, so it did additional plus 7 damage on top of the damage it normally would do. And this will happen whether you are the Sorcerer or the Wizard itself. So let's check out some combat, and then we'll break down gear as well as all the levels individually. Alright, before I start combat as a Wizard, I am actually going to change my spell slots here. I already have my minor elemental summoned, so I'm going to take him off and put my big elemental in. The big elemental is where the big time damage comes from, at least from a summon perspective. The guy's really strong. And because I have them summoned, I'm going to go back to my spell book and get rid of that and put something else in that I would like Glyph of Warding, for example. I'm going to cast Minor Illusion to start. Put haste on myself. Let's go into turn-based mode, and I am going to use my Glyph of Warding here. Fire, and I'm going to put it on them. Alright, so I have the glyph down there, so now I can open up and just start doing some damage, which is exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to start with Scorching Ray, that way I can just get my stacks up high. So we'll go with level 4. And you can see I have advantage because I'm attacking from the shadows, it says. And then now that I'm in combat, you can see with the illusion, they automatically basically were like in the spot I wanted them to be, and I procced the big ol' like fire damage from Glyph of Warding. I'm going to go ahead and just use Heat Convergence now, just because I think it'd be nice to use. Or I could attack first since I am hasted and possibly do even better damage. We're just going to use it now. That way one fireball will just knock them out. And I'm going to use the one for my staff so I don't waste a spell slot. So he got saved. Really surprised he was actually saved from that. That's okay. My other guys are not in combat yet, so I could use Erupting Cinder on him, and he's dead. So now both of my pets are in combat, which is pretty cool. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and run back here because I do want these guys to kind of chase me, because I do want to showcase how I won't do damage to my allies with evocation spells. And normally, you know, you would have other people in your party. I, however, don't, because I think it would be just too much of a showcase to have all of them. So I'm going to go ahead and have him jump up here. I already used his attack, so he can't attack. The dwarf, however, didn't, so I'm going to have him come up. He's a little too far out of range to do anything. Like, I could overheat, but that's not going to do anything right now. So I'm just going to have him dash so I can get in a good spot. Alright, I'll use my overheat. And his turn, you see it be my turn. So now I have the option to do some big time damage. So I do want to showcase, see, this is the Abjuration spell. I don't want to use that because this potentially, when it explodes, could trigger on my allies. Evocation spell, when I cast it, won't trigger on my allies. So I'm going to use this. And we'll go ahead for like big time damage here. And you can see he was automatically saved and took 0 damage. That's why this is really, really fun, and why I like the wizard aspect of this better than the sorcerer, because I do like having the option to do AoE damage and not affect my allies. Before we talk about breaking down every single class, I do want to talk about gear, because gear is going to be pretty much the same across the board, whether you are the sorcerer or whether you are the wizard. There's just going to be some minor changes. If you are a sorcerer, you go with the potent robe. This makes your cantrips do additional damage from charisma. This will stack with other things. It's really powerful. You get this from saving the tieflings from Moonrise Tower's jails. The robe I'm using as a wizard is going to be the Robe of Exquisite Focus. You buy this from the vendor inside Act 2 at Moonrise Towers. This just gives you +1 bonus to your spell save DC. Hat of Fire Acuity is extremely powerful. You get this from killing the Strange Ox. It has to be in Act 2 or Act 3. If you kill it in Act 1, it won't give this hat. This buff right here, Arcane Acuity, just gives you a stacking +1 bonus to spell attack rolls and spell DC. Cloak, go with whatever you want. I went with Cloak of Protection, +1 AC and saving throws is nice, especially since I have low AC and I'm squishy. Gloves, Thermo Arcanic Gloves. Whenever you deal fire damage, you gain 2 turns of heat. Well, Scorching Ray can hit multiple times. This can pretty much get you to max heat stacks and max Arcane Acuity stacks in 1 turn. Very powerful. The boots that I'm using are really nice because you will passively do conditions on the enemy, and we'll talk about that in a moment. You inflict 2 turns of Reverberation. This is insane. Reverberation is a stacking debuff that gives negative penalties to Strength, Dex, and Constitution saving throws. Once you hit 5 stacks, they have a chance to take additional thunder damage and be knocked prone, and if the enemy's knocked prone, you and everyone on your team will have advantage on their attack rolls. Neck Piece, Necklace of Elemental Augmentation. Cantrips that do elemental damage scale with your spellcasting modifier. As a sorcerer, that's going to be Charisma, which will stack with the chest piece, which will also stack with the elemental damage that you get at level 6. As a wizard, this is nice because your cantrip, your main one, the Firebolt, is an evocation spell. Wizards at level 10, if you go the evocation path, increase their damage to evocation spells equal to their intelligence modifier. So that's a nice way to get your little Firebolt to do additional damage. At bare minimum, it's going to be additional 10 damage, assuming you have 20 intelligence. There's going to be 3 different rings I want to talk about, so pick whatever rings you think is going to be best for you. I really like this ring here that will give radiant orbs whenever you use a spell on an enemy in an illuminated source. Here's the cool thing. Fire spells create light of their own, so you will constantly, whenever you deal damage with a fire spell, put radiant orbs on the enemy. Radiant orbs is a stacking condition that gives the enemy -1 to their attack rolls, pretty much guaranteeing that they're more than likely not going to hit you or your friends. This is only supposed to go up to 7, but currently it does stack more. From what people were saying, if you get this to 30 stacks, it can crash your game. I haven't ran into that, but I did see comments about it. The Kalos Glow Ring, whenever you deal damage against a target that's illuminated, you do additional radiant damage. It's 2 damage, doesn't seem like a lot, but I do want to showcase something here that's going to be really, really powerful in combination with this. So you can see my Shadow Hearts over there. Let me go ahead and use a short rest to get her up. She has 85 HP. I'm going to put a max level Scorching Ray. It's level 5, which is my max spell slot for this level. So I do want to show how much damage I just did to her. Look at all the extra damage that I have. Fire, Radiant, Fire, Radiant. The other one missed. If it didn't miss, it would have hit her and did Fire plus Radiant. Look at all the extra damage. So the Glow Ring will actually hit multiple times if you have attacks that hit multiple times in an area, which is powerful because you can also see I have 7 stacks of Radiant Orbs on her as well. So she's not going to hit anyone. Like, it's really, really strong, which is why I like pairing those. And I actually need to thank my viewers for that. Sorry, I forgot your name, but there was a viewer who commented about having this ring doing Radiant Orbs being really powerful. And I did try it out, and yeah, I like it a lot. So one thing I did want to point out that could be potentially dangerous if you do pair the Glow Ring with the heat mechanic. When you are illuminated and you take damage from heat, assuming you don't use all your stacks on the turn, you will hit yourself for damage. So for example, let me go ahead and use Quicken Spell real quick and just get max stacks off of Shadowheart. So you can see I got my 7 stacks of heat and all that fun stuff. And if I wanted, I could use my heat convergence right now just to do extra damage to really hurt her. I'm not. I'm going to end my turn instead and take it out of turn-based mode to show you. Okay, so you can see I took damage from heat. So let me enter turn-based mode again. Let me take off the Glow Ring and put my other ring on instead. And now let me exit. I still have the heat on. And you can see my own concentration was broken because of the heat mechanic. So that is one thing to keep in mind about the heat build that could potentially sway people away from using it, is the fact that you do take damage yourself. So you definitely want to be smart when it comes to using your heat convergence and knowing when is a good time versus not a good time to use it. So if you don't want to use those together, another thing I would say, if you don't use the ring for extra damage here, there's going to be some other options for you. The number one I would say to do is going to be the Ring of Mental Inhibition. Whenever a saving throw is failed against your spells, they gain mental fatigue, giving the enemy a -1 penalty to Wisdom, Intelligence, and Charisma saving throws for every turn remaining. This also stacks up to 7 times. So if you combine this with the other gear you have, you will be a debuffing machine, basically making so your teammates just constantly pass their checks. But you could save that ring for someone else on your team. It's going to be up to you and how you want to play it. Their Sentinel Shield you buy from the vendor, gives you +3 to your initiative, advantage on perception checks. Really powerful because it also gives you +2 AC as well. And having more initiative is never a bad thing since you're squishy. And then the stat that I have here gives us resistance to fire damage, which is nice because normally when you have stacks of heat on yourself, you take 1d4 fire damage. Well, with this, you only take half because it gives you the fire resistance. It gives you a free fireball you can cast once per long rest as a level 3 evocation spell. And it gives you ranged attack +1. Also, if you are playing a human, the Spider Silk armor is really useful for advantage on Constitution saving throws. As a wizard, you don't normally get that. And the heat mechanic, because it does burn you every turn when you do have heat, can technically have a chance to break your concentration, so this is also a nice alternative. So one thing I did want to point out about the wizard, which is really nice, is you have a thing called Arcane Recovery Charge. You can use this to gain your spell slots back. Even though there's a way to do that with necklaces, you can use this. I'm going to use all 5 charges to get my level 5 back. And now I have my spell slot back. So that's one benefit that wizards have. Another benefit that wizards have is going to be their spell book. Not all classes that are casters can just prepare and unprepare spells anytime they want. Wizards can. They can just take things out, move it as you need, which is really, really nice. For example, if I needed take flight, I could put take flight in and put something else off. Take off grease, put in take flight. Now I can fly. I don't need that. Replace it with something else, which is pretty cool. Not everyone can do that. Also, with the wizard, you have the option, when you take a look at your spell book, I can learn more spells. So all of these different scrolls that I have, I can spend gold and then I can actually learn these spells, which is really, really fantastic because it gives you a wide variety of spells. And if for whatever reason the enemy you're fighting is completely immune to fire damage, you have other options to damage as well. I do want to showcase the fire elemental real quick because this thing is just extremely powerful. It does take a level 5 spell slot, but this thing is a monster. Take a look at how much HP this has. It has 102 HP. And it has multiple skills it can do. It has the ability to warp itself as a bonus action. And it has multiple spells it can do. It has a multi-attack action that does fire damage and bludgeoning. It has the ability to do Erupting Cinder, basically like a mini fireball. And it has Scorching Touch, which will also burn the target. This thing is really, really good, and it pairs super well with your character for just spreading all that fire around the battlefield. One thing I do want to note, you can see I summoned it with Gale. So if I go to my spell book here and I'm like, oh yeah, I summoned him, let me take him off. Because maybe you wanted a different spell. Well, I summoned him, let's put on a different spell now. So a spell I don't have, for example, is Magic Missiles. Well, guess what? I still have my fire elemental. Yeah, I have the elemental even though I've replaced the spell itself. So if you recall, you have other elementals you can also summon. So if you go back to your spell book, what about Conjure Minor Elemental? So let's go ahead and get rid of invisibility and put that on. And you have a couple different options. You have 3 different options here. Clearly, we don't want ice. We don't want mud. I'm going to choose this one here and summon this creature. So this guy is cool. He doesn't have as much HP, but he does have some cool skills he does. He has Searing Smite, which is nice. He has the ability just to attack normally with his hammer. Pretty cool one-handed weapon. He has Overheat. He's got a bunch of different things he can do. And if anything, even though he has low HP, he will at the very least be someone to help fight your enemies with. So I have 2 actual fire summons that I summoned with Gale. And I'm just going to replace both of those spells. So I don't need the minor elemental anymore since he's summoned. Let's put Wall of Fire on instead. And guess what? These guys are going to be here until a long rest. Yeah, they are really, really cool. And I just think that's one really awesome thing you can do with wizards. Okay, let's run down the levels for the wizard first. Taking a look at my stat spread, you have to decide, do you want more constitution or do you want AC and initiative from dexterity? That's going to be up to you. Constitution's nice because you are one of the squishiest characters in the game. Wizards have really low HP, so having a little bit more constitution will never hurt. That being said, dexterity is nice for extra AC and more initiative. This is going to be up to you on which one you want. I'm a big fan of having the extra dexterity because I know my wizard is going to be in the back, and I like playing with frontliners as well. So more than likely, he's not going to get targeted all that often, but there is a chance he still can be, so do keep that in mind. Intelligence is 17. With the Hag's Hair, you can get this to 18. I'm assuming you are going to do that if you want max efficiency, because if you don't, that means you have to spend 2 feats to get your intelligence to 20. However, with the Hag's Hair, you can get it to 20 with 1 feat, giving you an additional feat to use for anything you want, because there is going to be a 3rd feat that you have to have for this build to really make it shine, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Skill proficiencies. Doesn't matter if you're a wizard or a sorcerer, you definitely want perception. Anything else is going to be up to you. Starting out, spell-wise, you definitely want your Firebolt cantrip. This thing gets really powerful. It's one of the hardest hitting cantrips in the game. At level 5, it becomes 2d10, and at level 10, it becomes 3d10. And this will get affected by other modifiers we'll talk about in a bit. Spell-wise, starting out, Burning Hands is really nice for anyone that's up front and close to you for fire damage. Shield is nice because this is a reaction spell to give you extra AC, so more than likely the character that's attacking you will miss, and this will last for the entire round. Grease isn't needed, but it is nice to have because this will make the enemies possibly be knocked prone, and you can explode the grease to do a kind of like a big fire AoE, so it's nice for that as well. Tasha's Hideous Laughter is for CC. Thunderwave is a spell to just have on hand because you can knock enemies away from you. And you will be using Mage Armor. Sorcerers have built-in Mage Armor for the Draconic Bloodline. You don't as a wizard, so you definitely want this to increase your AC. Level 2, you are going to be Evocation Wizard. This is the bread and butter for this because at level 2, all your evocation spells will not affect allies. Allies will always succeed the saving throws and take no damage from those spells. All your damaging fire spells are going to be considered evocation, so this is really, really handy. This means you can do giant AoEs like big fireballs and not affect your friends. Spell-wise, here, I'm a big fan of ritual spells. Longstrider, in my opinion, is going to be the #1 ritual spell to have. This is going to give you the ability to increase not only you, but all your allies' movement by 10 feet at all times, because this lasts until long rest, and as a ritual spell, it does not take a spell slot. Other spells that be handy for this: Enhanced Leap, really nice because you have low strength. Being able to triple your jump distance as someone that has low strength is really, really good for outside combat. Featherfall is also really nice. Here, pick whatever else you want, it's going to be up to you. Level 3, you get some more spells. Misty Step is really nice to be able to use a bonus action to teleport to another area, maybe to get higher ground. Other spells to consider: Scorching Ray, for sure. This thing is amazing. Hold Person is also really, really good for CC. Wizard level 4, your first feat, ability improvement. I'm assuming you have the Hag's Hair. If you do, this will be level 20. Already at max, fantastic. Cantrip wise, pick whatever you want here. Doesn't really matter all that much. Spells, here you want to definitely take what you didn't take before. So I didn't take Hold Person yet, so I'm clicking that now. Other spell, up to you. If you don't have a thief in your group, Arcane Lock could be useful to unlock doors and things like that. Level 5, you get some more spells. Counter spell, really, really powerful. And then of course you're taking Fireball. Counter spell is really nice to really block some really nice CC spells from enemies. And Fireball is just a giant fireball. Who doesn't like big fiery explosions? Level 6, you get a new subclass feature for Wizard. Your cantrips are upgraded. So cantrips, even if enemies make a saving throw against them, will still take damage, but there's no additional effects. Firebolt doesn't normally have a secondary effect, so this just means your Firebolt will always do at least half damage against enemies. Spell-wise, I like Glyph of Warding. This is useful if you want to set up a trap for the enemy to run into. Also, Grant Flight is really useful for outside of combat things, or Haste. Haste is also another very powerful spell. Wizard level 7. Okay, now you're starting to unlock some really cool things. Conjure Minor Elemental, really, really nice. Wall of Fire. Level 8, you get your second feat, and you are choosing Elemental Adept. This is going to give you two things. A, we're choosing Elemental Adept Fire because we are a Fire Mage, we are a Pyromancer. So any type of character that would normally have resistances to fire damage, this will bypass that. This is really great because if you are playing with another caster, another really big caster one is going to be the like the water-based casters that do a lot of lightning damage and they want to get their enemies wet first. Well, this will bypass the wet resistance to fire, which is nice. And when you do a spell that's fire, you can't roll a 1. Really, really useful. Unless you fight someone with fire immunity, you will always do good damage. Spell-wise here, you get to pick some more spells. Fire Shield's nice, but you're not going to be in a fray. This is more for like upfront characters, so I wouldn't recommend this. Here, pick whatever you want. I like Dimension Door. Greater invisibility could save your life. Same thing with minor invisibility. Pick whatever you want here. Wizard level 9. Spells. Definitely want Conjure Elemental. Very, very powerful. Other spell is going to be up to you. Wizard level 10 is where we're going to stop because that's where I was when I left Act 2. You get your Empowered Evocation. Your evocation spells will now do additional damage equal to your intelligence modifier. With intelligence at 20, assuming you used a Hag's Hair, that would be +5. This is nice because all your damaging spells for the most part are considered evocation. So not only will they do extra damage, they'll do extra damage from heat if they're fire, and they won't actually affect your allies. Cantrip, doesn't matter, pick what you want. Spell-wise, here, pick whatever spell you think is going to be useful for you. Okay, so as a sorcerer, your main casting ability will be Charisma. Your stat spread here is going to be very similar to the wizard. Only difference is you're choosing Charisma over Intelligence since this is what you actually go to use your spells with. Skill proficiencies, again, definitely want Persuasion, definitely want Perception. Anything else is going to be up to you. Cantrip wise, you definitely want your Firebolt. We already talked about that for the wizard. Pick whatever else you want. Spell wise, starting out, you don't need Burning Hands because you're going to get that for free. Shield, Chromatic Orb, so you can have some extra fire abilities. Subclass, Draconic Bloodline. This will set your AC to 13. It's built in Mage Armor. And for every level in Sorcerer, you get extra HP. Your Ancestry, choose Red, Fire. This will give you Burning Hands. The others are not worth it at all, in my opinion. Alright, level 2, you get some more spells. Here, we already talked about ritual spells. Passives, you get your different meta magic. So Twin Spell, so you can cast a spell at multiple enemies at once. I also like distance spell to make my spells be really, really far. Sorcerer level 3, you get some more spells. Pick whatever you want. I'm going with Misty Step. Passives, you want Quickened spell for sure to make your spells into a bonus action. This is what it will allow you to do 2 fireballs in 1 turn without haste. Alright, level 4. Cantrip. Pick what you didn't have before. Spells. Here. Pick what you think is going to be useful to you. Scorching Ray, in my opinion, definitely the pick here. Feat. Ability improvement. Assuming you use the Hag's Hair. Charisma will now be at 20, making it max. Level 5. Spells. Fireball or Counterspell. Fireball, in my opinion, will win over the other. At least for now. Level 6. Haste. Counterspell. Pick whichever one you want. It's going to be up to you. You can get haste from a bow. I'm going with Counterspell. Sorcerer level 7. Go ahead and pick some spells that you think are going to be useful to you. One thing I forgot to mention, at level 6, sorcerers get the ability to increase their spell damage for fire equal to their casting modifier. Because you should be at 20 charisma at this point, all fire damage will be increased by +5. Very similar to how the evocation wizard works at level 10. At this level, I am picking Wall of Fire. Level 8. Pick a spell you think is going to be useful for you and your party. Your feat, just like Wizard, is going to be Elemental Adept Fire. Pick whatever spell you think is going to be useful for you here. We already went in depth about most of these, so you shouldn't really need me to explain it at this point. And level 10, just like before, is where this build guide video is going to end, because I want you set up in order to go into Act 3. I would say Careful Spell is really nice to have here. Heightened Spell could be okay, but with the gear you have, you don't really need it. Or Subtle Spell, pick whatever you want here, it's not going to matter. One final tidbit before we close out this video. If you are playing as Gale or you're using Gale for this build, there is a permanent buff you can get inside Moonrise Towers, inside Balthazar's Chambers. This will give you permanent advantage on Constitution saving throws, which is really useful for the Wizard and pretty useful for the Sorcerer as well. But it is currently bugged. Unfortunately, it is seeming to go away after some long rest. I looked up on forums, some people said it affects them after 3, someone said it affected them after 7, and someone said it went away after their first long rest. So do keep that in mind. Normally, it is supposed to be permanent, but it seems like after the latest patch, it did end up breaking. And that's basically how you do Pyromancy. Do you need the heat mechanic for this to work? Not at all. You can do the same exact build that I showcased in this video for both actual subclasses without the gloves and replace it with any other pair of gloves that you wanted, and you will still do phenomenal damage. I like the heat mechanic though because it's free damage pretty much every single turn you can do. So it's going to be up to you whether you would like to use it or not. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. Comment down below any other builds you would like to see, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.
My son, the day you were born, the very forests of Lordaeron whispered the name Arthas.